Oh!
Because I was just, and it was Wheeling Wheelman, I think,
Oh, sure.
50 years ago,
Okay.
45 years ago.
You been around that long?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, longer, forever. So when we have this commonality of the bicycle, and you wonder sometimes, how come they don't have a 13-tooth gear for me to replace my worn out one? And how come we don't have that 13-tooth gear? How, why, where, what's with Shimano and SRAM that we can't get our parts? Shouldn't they just have those parts all the time for us? Anything we need, they should just have that. That's not how it works for them. They're not interested in the little parts. When they make derailleurs, they make 50,000 or 100,000 derailleurs for the bike company. And we're lucky enough, when they're making all those derailleurs, not all the parts fit and match. So they do have a few leftover parts that go out into parts distribution. But those are gone fast, a year or 3, and 7 years down the line, we can't get one. Because they're not making any today. And they're not going to make any tomorrow. So when we think of what is just in time, what's that supposed to be when we make product? In theory, you get your parts suppliers, all 20, 30, 40, and all the parts come in on the same day, and you put them on the frame, and you got a bicycle. Well, it's not working that way because you got to order from Shimano 9 months in advance, and your bank promised Shimano the money, so you borrowed the money from the bank, and you don't even have the parts, and that's just going to be all of those 50,000 derailleurs or 10,000 that they make, Shimano XT or whatever. They still make XT? I have no idea. You know.
I think they might.
Yeah. So when we need to get our parts, we have a hard time finding them. And we're out there buying used ones on eBay to put on customers' bikes to repair bikes. I did that for the last 10 years at the bike store. Nobody's got these, but there's some nice used ones on eBay. Are you okay with a used part? Yeah, I gotta get my bike going because I've got 7-speed shifters, not 10-speed shifters. And
7-speed shifters are down here.
well, they had a few on the handle. So when you think of just in time, when I was 19, in 1969, and I visited the Schwinn factory, became cozy with an engineer there, and he gave me the 4-hour tour of the factory. And we went everywhere, and we looked at everything. And the first thing that shocked me was the bikes come off of the racks, the frames, and the fork is with the frame, and the fork and the chain guard are with the frame if it's a coaster brake, and the frame goes upside down in a holder, and the conveyor goes along, and the worker looks at the frame coming, and he looks at the tag, and it's a yellow Schwinn Continental, and then it's an orange Schwinn Continental, and suddenly there's 3 varsities and 6 Stingrays and 9 collegiates, and I'm like, wait, what's going on here? He said, what do you mean? I said, don't you make like 4,000 varsities today, all green 20-inch frames, and put them in the warehouse? He goes, no, that would be inefficient. Inefficient? It would be more efficient. Oh, no. You see all these frames coming down the row? All of those are sold bicycles. And we take what the dealer orders, 15 bikes or 115 bikes, we put in the work order, and the frames are hanging all over the factory. Tens of thousands of them, because they can make those a week in advance or 6 weeks in advance, because that's just steel material that they happen to have all the time. So they come down the row, before they come to the assembler, they went to the paint, and they got paint guns with the orange and the green and the red, and so it's all done pre-sold. Doesn't have to go to a warehouse. You don't have to ship it 6 times from here to there and there to here and store it and pay for storage, pay for public warehousing or worse. And so he said, that's just-in-time manufacturing. I said, well, okay, I understood that. And then I began to look at all the things in the factory that they do make. Because they made all that stuff. Oh, there's that mono derailleur. Or SRAM. So yeah, we need just the back plate. They don't have any extra ones hanging around. They got the whole derailleur and that's it. That's all we're ever going to get from them. Because they didn't make any extras. And they're not going to make them for 9 more months. And if we ordered one, they wouldn't care. But at that Schwinn factory, raw material came in at one end, and they made nearly everything right in the factory. They didn't make pedals, or spokes, or the chain, or the saddles, or the grips, or the tires, but they made everything else. And it was right there in the factory, and it was astounding. Because unlike the high performance frames that all the builders build, and we get our torch out, and we're sitting there with the torch, and 20 minutes later we finally filled it all up with brass, and another 20 minutes over here. What Schwinn had was what was called electroforged. They made the frame parts, from the raw material, and then they welded it together with electricity.
This is heavy, isn't it?
Yes, because it's a Schwinn varsity.
I had a Schwinn varsity.
Yes. And so when we look at the main frame, part of the frame where the crank went in, what appears to be hand brazed around that joint, and what appears to be hand brazed here up where the fork was going to go in, that's not. This is 2 separate pieces, and if you look down the middle, you see that weld line? These were 2 clamshells that were put together in a fixture. The operator would put the 2 pieces in there, and they had, off the big truck, big rolls of steel, just the right width to do whatever they were doing, and the right thicknesses to make the pieces. And so they were stamping out those pieces somewhere else in the factory. Over 1,000 people working there. Wow. And then they welded those 2 pieces together. And the way they did that is a gentleman, he'd put them in the fixture, he'd draw a shield in front so he didn't have to wear goggles, and he'd press the button, then he'd go over here, and he would take the other one out that he had loaded a minute ago. So he's working 2 machines at the same time. One's over there welding. This one's done. That piece goes in the basket. And then he loads 2 new pieces. He goes back to this one, takes that one out, throws that in the basket. But it's not finished. It's rough. The roughness you see on the inside, it's rough on the outside. So people run them on belt sanders. The basket goes down the row. People get grinders and belt sanders, and then they end up with that finished piece. And then, when they get to the next stage, where the tubing's going to get connected to that piece, that particular piece of tubing, or the tubings that are already connected to that bottom bracket shell, you see where they're welded? If you look inside, yeah, they fixture it together, and they get that. We upside down? No, I cut that there. They fixture the piece of tubing that's coming from here over to there. And they get that in the fixture, and when they turn on the electricity, it's like a lightning storm. And so there's no hand holding the torch and spending 10 minutes or 5 minutes or even a minute. It's like 10 or 15 seconds. Even these little tabs are welded on with just compression and electricity that heats it up so hot that momentarily those metals are liquid, like red hot liquid metal. Just for a moment, then it's done. As soon as they take it out, it's ready to go. And that's the whole system. Same up here. It's called electro-forged. So they made a jillion frames, because they were making 3,000-4,000 bicycles every day.
Wow.
You gotta really be working to make that happen. So electro-forged frames and just-in-time everything. So what's the just-in-time part? The whole thing. So they made the frame and they made the forks. The fork parts, the bottom part of the Schwinn forks, this piece here winds around and goes back down. And that's one piece of forged steel, so that's not a hollow piece of tubing. And in fact, when it comes to the Schwinn factory, it was flat. It was like this and had the basic shape. And then they bent it, because you can bend a forged piece of material and you don't lose strength, because forgings don't mind being bent, and so it's tough. So now they've got the fork shape. They cut the slots in later when they get past the next operation. But with all that electro forging, saving time, in the 50s, the Soviets had invented a thing called friction welding, which is you rub the metal so fast together, the pieces of metal, that the metal liquefies, both pieces, in a tiny moment instant. So this is a steering column, and that's the stem's going to go in there. Now the stems clamp around the outside. But the fork was flat, and they bent it around, and there's a hole where this steering column goes into that we cannot see. But the hole was just the right size that when they took the steering column and they fixtured it into a big lathe, I think it was about 15 feet long. This was in the lathe part, and it was knurled. Does everybody know what knurled is? Knurled is when the metal has fancy, have we got a knurled tool?
Oh.
Not a knurling tool.
Yeah, I don't know,
Knurled is kind of like, you see that run down the middle of the rim there?
Yeah.
That
The inside of his pliers work for you?
yeah, and then if you look at the jaws of that pliers, you see inside the jaws, you see the knurling? So the steering column, the round piece of tubing with the threads at the other end, is knurled. So you can't stick it in the hole. But when you spin it fast enough and you poke it in, the knurling is going to help cause the friction. And when they press the button on the machine and it spins up to high speed like a Corvette, and you see it go, and with a microsecond, it's red hot molten, and that steering column is friction welded into that hole that's in the fork, and it's permanent. I've never ever seen one come apart. 1,000,000 forks a year, 1,300,000 forks a year. And that machine is over there in the corner when the factory was there. And I looked at that and I'm like, what the hell's going on? He said, well, that's friction welding. I'm like, no, that's not, you can't do that. But they do. Who's using friction welding now? You've all watched it. You didn't see the welding, but you saw the product. The 30-foot stainless cylinders for Elon's rockets that hold the fuel, and those stainless panels come together. The stainless panels touch, and you have a tool that spins on there. And they were using normal welders. Takes too long and it's imperfect. Now they use friction welders, and they run that spinner along that stainless steel seam, and I don't know how thick enough to hold 10 million pounds of fuel, but friction welded. So electroforged, friction welded, and you've got an easy way to make frames just in time. The material's coming off the trucks, And the frame they're going on with bicycles, out the door at the other end. Quick
Yeah.
and efficient. And most of them pre-ordered. And yeah, they made a few extras to put in the warehouse. Even this piece, when this piece was made, this was flat steel, this wide, and it was flat. And we've all seen the old-fashioned doorknob with the metal plate. It's got the hole and where the key goes in. It looked like those. They're flat, they're like this, with two nubs sticking up, these nubs here. Then the two big nubs sticking up, and then they fold it around, and they electroforge it on the bottom. They didn't sand this one down, because it was on the bottom, they didn't care. And when they welded the chainstays on, same thing. They didn't sand them down. So these went on after, these went on before. So when these went on before, they could get the belt sander around here and take what looked like this and make it smooth. So it was the illusion of a tube on tube with bronze brass brazing, but it's not, it's an illusion of bronze brass brazing. So they faked us the whole time. 3,000 or 4,000 of them every day. So not only do they make the frame and the fork, the forgings came from Ashtabula, Ohio. Ashtabula Forging Company. And Ashtabula made them the stem. So that's a hot forging, like a snap-on wrench. So it's real strong, because they were concerned they didn't want that to fail. But it's rough. When you look at how rough that is, well, then they hand it to the grinder and the person with the belt sander, and they would clean it up some, and no two are alike. 3,000 or 4,000 of them every day. And they would drill the hole and put the threaded in there for the bolt that would go in. And of course the bolt here with the wedge. Everybody had a Schwinn, didn't they? Did you have a Schwinn?
I had a varsity.
Yep.
Green.
Yeah,
What was your Schwinn?
I had a Continental in college.
Ooh.
Me too.
Continental.
In college.
I was low budget.
It was used.
It was $16 difference.
Oh, I don't remember.
64 or 79. What was your Schwinn?
Schwinn 3-speed.
Even better. No derailleur to mess up.
I'm embarrassed to say before
Yeah.
the Continental that I had department store bicycles as a kid. I was neglected as a child.
Well, we see that through all of the. I never had a Schwinn. I had a Sears.
I had Montgomery Wards.
Yeah, I was like, well, what was your Schwinn?
I had Huffies.
You did.
Yeah.
You don't have a Schwinn now?
No, not yet.
We can go to Salvation Army. We got varsities for like $10. So people think that their Schwinn is a collector's item, and if it's got fat tires from 1950, 48 to 58, and it's got the horn tank with the button in the horn, and it's pretty clean, and it's a men's, it may have some collector value. But the varsity, sorry, they made 14 million of them.
Wow.
So you get these calls every day. I got an old Schwinn. Someone said it's a collector's item. No. It's not a collector's item.
How about the Paramounts though?
Well, they made a lot of those too.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened is, and if we think of my age group, there aren't a whole lot of us who remember that thing. So who wants one now?
Mm-hmm. Were those made by Oscar Waston in
Oscar made some in the 40s,
40s? Okay.
and customs occasionally.
Okay, that's what I
And
thought.
I made a dozen.
You did. Okay.
Richard Schwinn, when they were moving from Chicago to Waterford,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a year and a half they were not able to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
He called me and said, I got frames that need to be repaired. Can you do these? Like, I talked to people down at the factory years ago, and I ain't coming down to the factory. He's like, no, at your place. We'll do it at your place. I said, yeah, we could do frame repair for you. So we did frame repair for a year and a half. And that would be, you have the bike on top of the car, and you drive into the restaurant with a low roof, and you ripped it up.
Oh,
I mean,
Yeah,
none of us here ever did that.
right.
Not the restaurant.
garage?
Garage, I blame my 2 toddlers at the time distracting me.
Yes,
Yeah, there you go.
no, and that's,
What was your decision?
that was forever.
I just didn't think it was on the road.
We were up here, and the triathlon was every year. I don't even know if it's still there. No triathlon. So, but the triathlon,
But not the one that went around the lake, right? You're talking about the one that ran around the lake, that one?
it was
Yeah.
swim, bike, 1 lap around the lake,
Yeah.
and then run. What's the restaurant down here at the curve with the low overhang,
Oh, Speedos. Is that what you're
or
thinking?
whatever it was back
Yeah,
then?
yeah.
You know, somebody from Wilmette drives in there with the bicycles, and
Okay.
you know, it's Friday night at 7 o'clock, and the triathlon's tomorrow morning. I just wrecked my bikes. What do you got? Well, we got a Kestrel here. Well, I always wanted one. I said, come back in 2 hours and put all the parts on. So, I mean, so it has happened. It's a tough call that way.
Now we hide our garage door remotes in the, in the trunk or whatever,
Yes, no,
It's
the
easy to do.
idiot
You
proof.
Yeah.
don't remember something's on the top of your car.
you put the remote in the shoe under the seat.
Yeah, somewhere else other than where it normally is.
Yes, exactly. So, just in time, they got a jillion frames, they go to paint, they come down the assembly line. First station is putting cranksets on. To 1 speed, so it's got a 1 sprocket. Of course, now the road bikes have 1 sprocket. It used to be 2, and boy, if you had 3 on the front, you were high living, so. But, so they look at the bike, and it's got decals on, so they know it's a Continental. They know it's a Varsity. Those had the same crankset. So, Speedster, 3-speed,
3 speed.
Speedster, 1. And so they got boxes of cranksets, put the gears on them already, and they're putting the bearings into the frame, and it's moving down the road. And then the fork's got to go in. So not only did Schwinn have, we're going to build it in the house, but they built their own headsets. They didn't have to order from Schwinn. The cups went in the frame. They stamped these out like crazy.
These are heavy too.
They're heavy. It's all steel.
Wow.
Steel is very inexpensive. Hand those around. And so not only did they make all these parts,
Yours was nicer, Diane.
but they chrome them.
Yeah.
So pick out the nicest chrome one that's in the pile.
That's nice.
Which is the nicest one?
Probably that one.
That one? Okay, you get to keep that one.
That one's been taken on and off a few times.
It has. Yeah, here, Wayne, you get the one that's scuffed.
That was just a little dull, and this one's a little dull.
All right, you
So
keep
must
that
have
one.
the downside.
You get one for your pocket,
What part of the bike does this go on?
and you get one for your
The
pocket.
top of the headset.
Oh.
Top of the headset.
Okay.
Here,
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
show you where
see
the
there, right there.
goes on. So, the stampings machines, just like the stamping machines that stamped that out when it was flat, they stamped those cups. And when you stamp the material, if the steel is annealed or softened, stamp's easier. And then you put it through hardening process. So not only did they stamp the part, then they made it hardened. So what that means is they would bring it up to a certain temperature, and they would quench it in a certain type of oil, usually pig fat. No, that was 200 years ago we used pig fat. But, so then all those parts had to go to chroming, including this part here where the bearings would actually fit to the cups. Where did I put the cups? They're there.
I think it's in pretty good shape, really, when you think about the age.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So the cups go in the frame, in the head tube, and then the bearings go in, and the bearing cone on the fork, one on the top, one on the bottom. And the fork spins, and then the lock nut goes on to adjust the bearings. So they made all this, and they heat treated them, and then it went through chroming. 3,000 to 4,000 of these every day.
Wow.
6,000 to 8,000 of these. But the most fascinating one is that nut. Because when you walk in the door to work there, those hexagonal shapes, that was a pre-made piece of steel from the steel company. And the bars were 30 feet long. And the whole truckload got unloaded and put it on the racks. But then they'd load that bar into the machine. But not just one bar, like 7 of them. So here's this huge machine, bigger than a Volkswagen bus. And there's 7 of these bars in the different stations. And at every particular spot, when the machine is going automatically, those hexagonal bars, they're solid, and they're the exact shape this way. As they spin, the tool drills a hole in there. But the next station up, the next tool is a threading tool that puts the thread in. And then the next station over is a cutter that when that is spinning, it cuts that shape there. And then on the next station, there's a cutter, and it's, when we say cutter, like a wood chisel, only made for steel. And then it would cut that beveled piece. And then the next cutter would cut the piece off, and it would drop in a bucket. When I say bucket, it was just like a bucket. And this machine was all by itself. And all of these pieces of bars that are rotating like faster than a Corvette engine, when the process is finished, the hole and the thread and the chamfer, the other chamfer and the cut, the whole thing rotates one station because the bar's got to go to the next position to get the next process done. You're looking at this thing going like, who invented that? It's actually called a screw machine, but we usually think of them as making small things, but they were making these hex nuts. 3,000 to 4,000 every day. That tool ran 24/7, 7 days a week to make the hex nuts. And they threw that machine away when they closed the factory.
Wow.
Boy, was I disappointed. Because they said to Richard, don't throw the tools away. Why? Is it because someone's going to want remakes of the Schwinn Stingrays? And then they did. And then they had to make them in China or Taiwan. So if your bike had derailleurs, which or when you get stuck with a 3-speed. If your bike had a derailleurs, you had these up on the stem, right with the headset. The lock nut went on top here and held it in place. And then you had your shift levers. Did you have them at the stem or did you have them on the down tube?
I probably had them on the stem, I guess. Mine was a very generic bike.
What year?
It was in the 70s.
Who had one from the mid-60s?
Me.
Then it was down tube in the mid-60s. And then it was like, that was too hard for people to ride with.
I ran with 2 of them down tube shifters.
Yeah. But so then the Varsity and the Continental, it all went up to here. And the Suburban, which had fenders. So when those bikes were coming down the assembly line, and the assembler looked and saw a Suburban, not only was the fork there and the changer, but the fenders. So they knew what parts to go on. So they made all of that at the factory. So it was right there. They need another 10,000 of these next week. They'd turn the machine on and make them. They didn't have to wait from SRAM or Shimano. It was their own pieces. The cranks, the solid one-piece cranks, Ashtabula made the fork legs, and then Schwinn bent them. Ashtabula made the stem. Ashtabula made that crank, but it came raw and rough and ugly. And so they grinded it and polished it and chromed it. And they also put all the threads on for all the crank bearings and the threaded holes for the pedals, where you can put the pedals in. And Wayne, I know you've been wondering for a long time, why are pedals threaded left hand and right hand?
Is it like a plumbing thing?
Very curious, yeah.
Why are they
So
threaded?
that as you're pedaling forward, you're not loosening one pedal.
Oh, that makes sense.
No?
No,
That seems logical.
it's the other way around. When you're on the board track in 1895, and you go high up on the board track, and you got toe clips and straps on, and they didn't have as good a bearing systems then, and you dive down that track to get ahead of the other guy because you're sprinting on the board track and you're going 35, 40 miles an hour down the track, and the pedal bearings suddenly go bad and it locks up, the pedals will actually unscrew.
Oh.
Because you don't want your ankle to rotate around.
Oh, yeah.
So the pedals will unscrew and you save your ankles. 1895.
Wow.
I mean, that's when they figured that all out, because somebody probably had right hand threads on both sides and
Yeah.
one of the ankles got twisted.
Wow.
So who's the surgeon here? Who's the orthopedic? We don't have any orthopedics?
I'm a client for an orthopedic surgeon.
Right.
Aren't we all?
We have an internist? Nobody's an internist?
Call Chris.
Who's the lawyer?
He's the lawyer.
I've reformed. I haven't practiced forever, but I have a law degree. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I mean, you did it. You know, when I looked at all the young people that worked over the years, and I harped on them, man, you gotta get an engineering degree. You gotta get an engineering degree. Even if you're gonna go to law school, you gotta get an engineering degree first. Then you go to law school. And when they see both of those, they're not even gonna interview you. They're just gonna hire you. You're automatic. You're in. You're in.
Patent law.
Yes. That purple frame, patent law. When I built that purple frame in 1980 or 81, Kestrel had not started yet. Bevel, the guy at Trek that I begged to be a Trek dealer, he left Trek after 2-3 years of inventing the glued together bikes, which wasn't him, because they glued bikes together in the 1930s. Bevel started Kestrel, and the first Kestrel was the Kestrel 4000, and they had this curved shape in the carbon frame.
Yeah.
And somebody sued them for patent violation.
Oh.
This guy had a patent on that characteristic of the curved aerodynamic shaping in this part of the frame. And this was sitting on my desk, and Bevel called, because I was a Kestrel dealer after I begged him to be a Kestrel dealer. And he finally said, okay, you can be a Kestrel dealer. He said, do you know any aero frames that have a cutout similar to the Kestrel 4000? I said, oh yeah, I know one. He's like, no, this is serious. We're getting sued. Somebody has a patent on that. I said, well, that could happen. When did the guy get the patent? Well, like 1984. I said, well, no, you can't have a patent because this was before that. And this had been featured in publications that had gone all across the United States. They've been in 2 different magazines. You can't get a patent if it's prior art.
Sounds like a countersuit.
Well, I don't know how Kestrel and Schwinn took care of it.
Right.
Because by that time, Schwinn was involved with Kestrel and they owned 51% of Kestrel. Yeah,
I didn't know.
that was Richard and Ed thought, well, if we buy Kestrel and we buy that folding bike, the Montague, and if we buy the Velodyne, and if we buy this, we can't lose. Our business is gonna boom. It didn't help. But, so Kestrel's lawyer and Schwinn's lawyer for patents was downtown behind the NBC logo on the building. What building was that? So after I explained to Bell I had this, and this was all,
That was 81?
yeah. And so they took that law firm, and the guy lost his patent. So then that set the precedent for now it is really prior art. It means everybody could use it. So Bevel was like, man, how come you didn't patent that? I said, no, you don't patent anything. Chinese will just steal it from you anyways. And then what are you gonna do, sue them? Did you do international?
No.
It's even more complicated. Yeah,
Every year long gets more complicated.
yes.
More history, more precedent.
So we built this in 4 days after Tange introduced this aerodynamic tubing,
Was it a track bike?
track bike.
Yeah.
And there were no seat posts. So we just extended the seat tube and put an ordinary clamp on there. Made a separate sculpted piece. This did not come from Tange. This is United States aircraft tubing, 4130 chrome moly aircraft tubing that we formed and shaped because I thought, well, if we're going to make aero, maybe it should look a little more than just a plain aero tubing. And now we see that in so much.
It's all fillet raised?
All fillet brazed. And
That fork
Tange had not annealed the fork blades. So when you have fork blades, and you have all this fancy chrome moly tubing, to put a curve in the fork, put it in the oven and let it cool slowly. And it makes it soft enough to put it in the bender. Couldn't bend them. So I'm like, okay, we will offset the fork blades in the homemade crown so that it actually is forward. And of course now if we look, we see bikes have straight forks too, but they're offset forward. Not from me, but there's others who did that as well. But boy, when we showed this at the trade show, the very next week after Tange gave us the tubings, everybody was like, holy cow, we didn't get that part. I said, no, that's when you build your own airplane and you use chrome moly tubing, you get tubing from the steel company. So we'd call the steel company and I need a piece of tubing. How many 27-foot pieces do you need?
One.
And sometimes we did. We bought one piece of tubing. I'd go down to my Volkswagen Rabbit and I'd bring my hacksaw and I'd cut it in 3 pieces and let it hang out the window. And you're inside Ryerson Steel Company in Chicago, which is a huge building. And I'm inside with my Volkswagen Rabbit and there's flatbed trailers with 80,000 pounds of steel. And I'm buying like, guy said, we don't have a program to invoice for that small amount of money. So,
What do you call that fork crown style?
well, we made that out of an aerodynamic piece of chrome moly tubing, and we just kept cutting and shaping till we could get the steering column into it, and we had to hand braze it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do friction welding. And then when we cut the pockets for the blades, they go up inside that arrow shape, and we brazed it all up and cut off the excess and smoothed it down. So we weren't sure it was going to work. You know,
I've
sometimes
never
you make
seen one
stuff
like that, yeah.
and it blows up. So
Where's the hole for the brake?
track bike.
I know.
Yeah.
Trick question.
Yes, very good. You win a cookie. You win a cookie. So
There you go, Marvin. Here's your cookie.
Okay, all right.
So what else was Schwinn making down there just in time? All of those things, and they made their own rims. So they didn't have to worry about the rims coming from Japan or France. And a piece of steel about that wide on a big roll, came from Ryerson Steel probably, and just flat, and as thin as you see that material, But what you see now when it's finished is it's doubled over, but it has a hollow pocket. So the knurling that, you can hand it around, the knurling that we see inside and outside of that rim were driving wheels that was pressing down on that steel so tight, and big motor to push that steel along, and there were a variety of big wheels like pulley wheels, like when you're unloading a truck and you got this thing full of wheels and you're sliding the boxes on there. There's like a dozen of those, and it's pushing the steel, then the next set of wheels a little further down, pushing the steel a little more, and it's wrapping it around, and you end up with that shape. It's straight. And as soon as it's coming off of that shaper, there's a thing like this, and it goes boom, boom, and it pokes the holes in it. They're not drilled holes. It takes too long.
Sure.
And the drills get dull. So it's boom, 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 and this thing's moving along. And after the holes are poked in, it goes through another series of rollers, and it goes like this, round, and gets chopped off. And then if you look where they drill the valve hole eventually, it's butt to butt on that hoop, and you got 27-inch rims, which are narrower than that. So they have different rolling machines to roll different width rims, 27 1 1/4, 26 1 3/8, 26 1 3/4 were the big fat ones for like stingrays. So you adjust the hoop to make 20-inch rims, 24-inch rims, 26 and 27s, and then just like the guy putting those pieces in that electro welding machine, puts it in the machine, puts the shield, presses the button, walks over and takes out the finished one, puts it on the rack. Eventually there's 100 rims, and they get rolled off to grinding and polishing it, and then to chroming. So they got it all there. So they could have material coming in one end and bikes go out the other end.
I just saw something this week. Somebody's coming out with a 32-inch wheel now.
Saw that today.
What? Because they can? Or, I mean, is there?
They roll upstairs easier.
Okay.
Yeah, and bigger wheels roll with less energy requirement. That's true on our car.
But there's got to be some
13.
end point to that, right? Or no?
13s, 14s, 16s, 20s, locomotive wheels. The bigger the locomotive wheel on the locomotive, the easier it rolls. So, I have a runny nose. Byproduct of COVID, but it's not as bad as it was 2 and 4 years ago. So just in time at Schwinn was an amazing thing. And like I said, when I first walked in there, I'm like, Spike, that was his name, Charles Shannon. This is crazy. You should just make 4,000 varsities and stick them in a warehouse. He goes, no. So they would make to order. And you would order a month or 3 or 6 months in advance. And if you ordered enough bikes, you maybe get a discount because you ordered far enough in advance that they could have enough of that hexagonal bar to make the headset lock nut, because they needed to make those. They were pretty confident that they were staying in business, and so it was 1,000 plus people, sometimes 1,400, sometimes 2.5 shifts a day, Saturdays,
Wow.
and it was like metal magic. It was astounding to see all that stuff going on. People working shoulder to shoulder on belt sanders and grinders, and each process going along to make these pieces happen. So that whole electroforged portion,
Was it loud?
oh yeah,
It's gotta be so loud.
Yeah,
but they got paid well.
sure.
They didn't quit and go work at Rosen's Bakery. So the electroforged, when we have tubing for hand brace frames, we would have, right here in my pocket, where's that chocolate? What's in there? Oh, that's left over from, what's that, Green Day? St. Patrick's Day. Don't drink that green beer. When we would have tubing, fork blades, or the rear chainstays between the crank and the rear dropouts, the tubing would have a domed piece of tubing shaped like my fingers. They would have a slot and it would go onto the dropout. And then you'd warm the two of them up with the brass and you'd puddle all the brass on. And if you did a good job, it would braze the tang inside and it wouldn't come loose like these two did on whoever made these. So you had that beautiful shape of the tubing coming down and all that brass brazing. Only we don't, because what Schwinn did was they stamped out the dropout and they created the illusion of the domed end and the brass brazing, and then they stamped the seat stays and the chain stays and they butted them close together, put it in the machine, press the button. 14 seconds later, or 8, lightning and thunder and electricity, enough to kill a horse, and you have electro-forged instead of hand brazed. Do you have campy dropouts in any of your frames? Do you?
I think so.
Who's got campy? There you
Bob
go.
Jackson from 72.
There's your campy dropout.
Bob Jackson from 1972.
There's your
with
campy
campy
dropout.
dropouts.
Thank you.
I do have a steel bike that was made in the Raleigh frame factory in England.
And it'd be similar to that. Domed shapes on all of them. The Grand Prix and Super Course and all of the frames was that way. And brazed. Brazed frames. Ross Bicycle Company out east, they had lugged frames. Schwinn did not. Schwinn had them later, they had the Latour. But Ross, they would assemble this whole lugged frame together with the tubings, and they had pre-punched into the tubings pockets where there were plugs of brass in those pockets, and now the brass is in there, but it's not melted yet. And so they take the whole frame, it's fixtured together with a simple fixture. It would go into molten salt at 1,800 degrees. The brass would melt. It was the correct amount of brass, and it wasn't going to come apart. And that brazing would braze the whole frame, no torch. Just brazed every section of the frame, and it would come out, cool. It was ready, but it was full of this molten salt. But they would shake that off, grind that off, dissolve that off, and the molten salt, when we're brazing stuff like dropouts, we use a paste flux, just like lead solder for building your. Who had the Allied radio that made their own radio? Did you make your own radio? You went to Goblet's and bought one?
No.
My dad did.
He made his own.
His own radio?
Allied radio.
Allied radio.
Yeah.
Soldered all those little pieces
Yeah.
together. And that's only 600 degrees.
Okay.
But the brazing is
I don't have it here.
1400.
Wow.
Yeah. So different temperatures to give the different types of brazing materials the correct temperature to moltenize that brazing brass material. Sometimes it's silver, sometimes it's lead to build that radio.
Is soldering always using with lead? Like if you're soldering wires?
Usually lead solder.
No. Well, because I did a lot of soldering at my job, my prior job, a
Right.
long time ago.
Now, if you heat it too much, the solder can boil. And then the molecules can go into the atmosphere. But if you heat it just enough, 99.9% stays right there at the work.
And if you don't heat it enough, guess what you get? A cold solder and the wires come off.
Right, and we all know that. So when you, yeah,
So if you're working with somebody who does like a really kind of a half-worked job and the wires come loose, that's not good.
you mean people are supposed to follow instructions and do
Yeah.
correct work? Oh, that's
And
so,
make neat and tidy
that's so
solders.
old fashioned. That's so last century.
Mhm.
But there's people now who do a good job making stuff.
Mm.
So where did you solder? Where were you doing that?
At the phone company. So the guys
You worked for the
outside-
phone company?
Yes.
Yeah.
The guys outside would put your stuff in, and then I'm in the inside wiring your phone number to the equipment inside.
Is it solid copper wire or stranded? No,
And
it's
that
solid
was-
wire because it's small.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you solder it.
but I don't know if I'd say it was copper, but yeah, we did a lot of soldering.
So phone company, we got the wires outside running through pipes underground. Pipes are made out of different materials. And the water gets in there and the wires go bad. No, they have air compressors to force air into that tube where all the wires are in and keep the water out. Wayne, did you know that?
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Who did you work for?
The phone company.
Which one?
I worked for Illinois Bell,
AT&T.
now AT&T, yes.
Yes,
Went
right.
full circle.
Yeah, we went like through a lot of transitions, yes.
Ameritech, the
But when I started, it
SBC,
was Illinois
yeah.
Bell.
Yes,
back
two
to
wires.
AT&T.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, tip and ring.
that can go bad.
Mm-hmm.
So now we just go like this and it goes
In the sky
Yeah, right.
someplace.
Starlink.
So your RRB frames, did you build them with Reynolds 531 also?
Sometimes.
You did?
Right. The
Okay,
tubing brands, the tubing companies,
yes,
that's marketing companies.
okay.
Mm.
All of that is spectacularly strong aircraft type tubing, which would be steel aircraft frames.
Mhm.
Before steel, the aircraft were built with wood
Okay.
and fabric
Mhm.
and sewed together. The lady applied for the job, a sewing job, fabric job, and she didn't know she was applying to work with Wilbur and Orville. She became the first lady airplane manufacturer person, and she sewed all of those fabrics together,
Wow.
and they painted up with paint to make it work.
Hmm.
You ever go in an airplane?
A couple. Not the right plane.
Let's go in the airplane.
Not now.
That lady never flew in an airplane, so she was 88 years old.
Wow.
I mean, it just didn't,
Wow.
working in the factory. So what else did you do at Illinois Bell?
I started as an operator, then I was a service rep, then a frame attendant, which is the soldering thing.
Yes,
And then I was a central office technician, which is more like database related.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
then I
as simple
retired
as,
as a database.
it's as simple as 2 wires.
Yes.
And so when they ripped all the wires out of the big box,
Well,
Yeah.
each person had their little, like 1,
right,
2, yeah.
but at the stores, at the retail stores, like this shopping center,
Ah,
the box is out back and there's,
a million wires.
yes, and they ripped them all out because they thought the alarms wouldn't go off. And the alarms went off, and they heard the fire and the police, and they ran. And then I'm the first one there. How do I call? I went in the box, and I just kept doing this with wires until I made a connection. And hello, phone company. Send them out. Send them with the drawing. Why? Oh no, it's a mess. I'm lucky. I don't know whose line I'm calling out on, but I got 2 wires to work with my phone on 2 things. And so yeah, I know. And wireless,
I'm not sure how that works. I was all landline.
I know.
Mhm.
But wireless is the rest of the world.
I know.
Yeah.
I left when that was sort of like blooming.
They don't have the budget to bury wires. You know.
Well, now they don't.
in the
I don't even-
Amazon
I don't
jungle.
even think they maintain wiring anymore.
So it's all gone wireless. So just in time, 3,000 to 4,000 bikes a day, 6,000 to 8,000 rims had to go through chroming.
Yeah.
And then the spokes have got to go in the hubs. If it's a foot brake, coaster brake, they bought the hubs. If it's a front hub, Schwinn made their own hubs. It was just an astounding factory. I can't impress upon everybody enough. And the reason I thought of talking about it is because people just don't know. How does a factory work? Do you ever work in a factory?
No, we're 4 companies that had factories.
But
not
did you go
directly in the
through and,
factory.
and watch
Yeah,
and see?
some of it, yeah. One of the things we used to make was a big coaxial cable, and it used this thing, machine similar to what you described for the rims. Flat ribbon copper, wrapped, and then butt welded.
Yes, and there was an electric welded of some sort, yeah. And then that would run under the ocean to Europe.
Going up towers and all
I know.
over.
Factory work?
Peterson's Manufacturing, DeWitt, Nebraska, I made vice grips. That's why I went to college.
Vice grips.
I did the same repetitive motion 2,100 times a night, and then I ended up back in the plating department because it was more exciting.
Yeah, yes,
It
but,
was, it was.
but again, you know, stamped piece maybe, or forged, and then shaped, and then grinded, and then.
I was doing the needle nose pliers had just come out, they're needle nose vice grips. This would have been 1980, 81. And yeah, we were doing those needle nose, and we're doing the grinding on the pincher parts.
Right, just to make sure it all worked nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, quality
Same
control.
repetitive motion, 2,200 times a night.
Can you imagine that?
Yes, I still have nightmares.
I mean, well, I think about people that work in factories now, though, like even, we were watching a little thing about eggs, you know, and you see these eggs coming down, and then the guy's like loading them in the box, I'm like, oh my god, no, I couldn't do
Oh,
that.
yeah, no.
All day.
But
I mean, really fast, and they're eggs, so they're breakable.
But no matter what work we have, there's gotta be productivity, otherwise the boss can't pass. So you made 2,100 of them.
2,100, 2,200, needle nose vice grips a night, 8-hour shift.
Wow.
We pick one up and we put it in, this push down, it would lock it in, we push it against the grinding wheel, crank it, bring it back, take it out, hand it to the next guy, he'd reverse the process.
Okay, you
And
did
then it'd
that.
go into a big tub, and then it would go off to the plating department, so we were kind of towards the end of production.
Yeah.
And then the plating department, we did every piece that went through the plant.
I worked in a small factory on Belmont Avenue for a year and a half, and the little plaques, all different sizes with the laminated plastic that got engraved, you know, for trophies and things, or all variety of things. But the one I got where I was like, oh gee, no really, boss? You know, like 10,000 of them. Please use next aisle. And that would be at the grocery store when they had the gate in front of the checkout at A&P, and they'd close the gate and please use next aisle. So it was, you know, you couldn't have it on a 3x5 card. That would be low class. So there I am. He said, you don't have to do those every day. There'll be smaller jobs because they don't need them all at once. And so, you know, tomorrow you'll be making 100 of little ones, and every one will be different. It'll be for some kind of electronic machine. So the radios, the Allied, he would sometimes make, for older radios, he would make the plate with all the numbers AM, FM engraved in the plastic, where someone would have a damaged one and they would need a replacement. And he had all of the master copies to be able to engrave that into the plastic so someone could get a replacement part. Yeah, which we can't get anymore. Except for Schwinn headset lock nuts.
I don't have my varsity anymore, though. The varsity's been gone a while.
Really?
Yeah. And actually, I think, isn't that the one? No, that wasn't the one that fell off the car, was it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it was.
Not us.
Not us.
Someone
Yeah,
else.
we gave
Put
it to a friend
put a
and then
rack
they.
together poorly, and along the highway on
Yeah.
the interstate, the two bikes come off with the
In
rack off the
Wisconsin.
trunk and get damaged.
We've all had customers lose their
Oh my
racks.
God. Yeah,
Yeah.
terrible.
Oh yeah, and I don't drive behind someone with a rack. I don't drive behind a steel truck in case that roll
Right.
comes rolling
Yeah.
out the
Yeah,
back.
right.
You know, all variety of things. I don't.
Yeah.
I
Or
don't
a scrap metal truck with the little thing that's over the truck, like everything's flying out, yeah.
yeah,
Snow on the top of the trucks in the winter.
Oh,
and that, and I'm guilty of that when I had my van. You know, all of a sudden I'm like, oh gee, look at that thing flew off there. Why are they following so close behind me? Silly
People.
tagging on my bumper there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
they're drafting you.
Yeah, no, well, I can't drive that close to someone. I like that distance.
Yeah.
Is it my eyes?
No.
Is it the brakes don't work? Questions?
Who raced the bike?
I loaned it out to so many
Oh,
of
yeah?
them. I mean, I maybe rode it like 3 miles on the track, but
Kenosha Velodrome and,
in Northbrook and others out east,
yeah.
they would travel with that. So Kevin Hetherington raced it a lot, and he thanked me again the other day for
Yeah.
racing on it 35, 40 years ago,
Wow.
whatever it was. He's like, yeah, you know, but aerodynamics doesn't work. It could be all square tubing, we would go just as fast. No. You remember Bob Wright?
I'm not familiar with them.
Bob Wright lived right there in Wilmette.
Oh, okay.
Bus driver, retired, he's down in Florida. But his wife's brother worked at the Fermi lab.
Oh, okay.
And when we got the aerodynamic tubing, he came with books and little calculators and a pencil.
Wow.
And we were like, how much can it save? And he spent like 2 hours. And he was that kind of physicist,
Wow.
mathematician. And he's like, it'll save 0.9 seconds every 1,000 meters on the track at this estimated speed. And I was like, okay. And when I would tell people that, how could you know? I'm like,
I've said so.
Someone knows.
have we all ridden Bull Valley?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We were just on Bull Valley
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And is Valley View the one that goes down and then it goes
He
up?
just pointed
It's
that out to me.
Valley
I
Hill
was like, oh,
Road
that's
is
a
one of
hill.
the steepest roads.
Valley,
It's the steepest in Bull Valley.
yeah,
Valley Hill.
20%, great.
Yeah, it's horrible.
There's a,
Yeah.
yeah, you can go 55 going
Oh,
downhill.
yeah. It's a
And if the
50
deer runs
plus.
out in front of you, it's
Yeah,
bad.
you're.
For
it's-
you
you're
and the
toast.
deer.
Yeah.
But I would go out there
Mm-hmm.
and I would
Wow.
do coast down tests on stuff.
Wow.
And you don't want to be coasting at 60 because nobody races at 60, except Lance. And then you don't want to be going 15 either because none of us go 15.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe some people do.
I went 61 in Colorado on a tandem downhill.
Oh, wow.
Independence Pass?
One of the M ones, McClure maybe?
Yeah, yeah, and you're going. Would you do that again?
55.
Yeah, probably.
Really?
Not me.
Yeah.
My wife.
If it was a clear road ahead,
We
straight, fairly straight.
We
Yeah,
did
you gotta look for anything on the road at that
Yeah.
speed.
we did 63 down Independence
Oh,
Pass.
yeah.
Wow.
But only at the top, because as soon as you get down to like 11,000 feet, the air is so much thicker, then it's slowing you down. So then you can feel it, and suddenly you're at 8,000 feet, and you're like, no, it's 45 is,
Yeah.
that's all it wants to go.
I found it's right about 50 where your helmet starts to lift
Yeah,
off.
What do you think about the state of bikes today? I mean, it's funny, in some ways they've changed so little, but at the same point, they changed exponentially.
yes, but it's really, we should just need to get outside. I mean, all of this stuff is super amazing. Fat tire things. Wendy and Mike, they're riding on the beach with the dogs all the time. Do you see them on Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, big fat tire things down to Illinois Beach State Park and Racine Zion or wherever they go, and you ride along the beach trail, so you can go almost anywhere, everywhere.
My joke is, I moved here from Arizona, and I tell my friends back there I ride year round, I just need at least 3 bikes to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's not a horrible
Oh, no.
investment.
It's a good
No,
thing.
it's a good thing, yeah, exactly. So, it's all astounding stuff. I mean, I don't know how to fix them. Don does. And the
Andrew.
gentleman there, Andrew fixed them.
A little bit.
Bleed the hydraulics,
Yep.
and I would defer to my brother, and when he retired, I'm like, people would call, I'm like, no, you want to go to so-and-so shop. Why? So my brother retired. I don't know how to do it. And that was it. Then I would send him off to somewhere else. Because then there was 16 different ways depending upon who made what. And there was some horrible hydraulic product from some of the manufacturers. They would make their own. They weren't going to use Shimano or SRAM or Hayes. They'd try and make their own, and they made a mess out of it. You know, getting all your materials right, Schwinn, and having all those pieces of material once you've done it enough, and you're making 14 million Schwinn varsities,
Wow.
yeah, they're all gonna work, you know, but when you're, oh, we can make our own hydraulic product. I wonder what kind of aluminum we're supposed to use. Hams or Pabst Blue Ribbon cans, you know? And so suddenly we had product years ago and the manufacturers didn't back us up, you know, and, well, we'll give you $10 credit. No, I went and spent $100 on the other brand to make that bike go. That guy gave me $2,000 for the bike and I gotta make his bike go. So, leave messages with the owner of that bike company. They never call you back.
Sure.
That's bad.
Oh yeah. I called AT&T downtown Chicago one time.
Yeah. The trick is, you need to talk to the president. That'll get you action.
I did.
Because nobody wants you to call the president of the company.
I did. And what did he say to
I
me?
learned that as a service rep.
He said to me, "How did you get this number?" I said, "I'm in Kenilworth. We have the special phone book." What? The lines to the bike store in Kenilworth were little wires buried not in a tube,
Oh,
but in a little ditch between the concrete alley and the brick building.
with water?
Wow.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And it would go bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, we go on the other side of the street. We dig a 4-inch trench right along the curb. We put the wire in there. And we fish it under the culvert over to the bike store. And I get like 4 brand new wires. I said, I can see the box right there. If I have to do that myself, am I going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
And he's like, where are you? I said, I'm in Kenilworth. You go by on the train every day to your house in Lake Forest. And he says to me, how do you know I'm from Lake Forest? Where else would you live? And you know how I got his number?
No.
When you want to know actually what movies are running, and you don't want to listen to that recording, and you know, they got such phone number, 8000. You call 8001, 8002, 8003 until you get someone who answers the phone. I'm checking on what time the movies start today. I'm the janitor.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 8004. And then I got through to him. It was only about 9 or 10 numbers, and it went through. He wasn't off the wall irate. He was just like really puzzled. Creepy. Wasn't stalking him much. Yeah. So, yeah. So they buried some new wires in the alley.
You were lucky that they did that.
Well, first because there's a bundle, they would fish for 2 better ones. They did that for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I'm just observing, like, how do things get made? How do things get made better? How do we get stuff done? Push everybody till they're so mad they quit. Right? Is that what you're doing?
I try.
You're pushing them?
I try.
I know. I think, did I send you that article on the YouTube about productivity?
Productivity, yep. It's tough.
It's
Tough around here.
It's very tough. Oh, it's tough everywhere though. But I mean, the call
I need to
is.
have you come run the bike shops for me.
Well-
I heard stories.
Well, I put the tickets on the repair board,
Okay.
and did I tell you? I would tell the customer it'll be ready at 3 on Thursday, and yours, next one will be ready at 4. And all the mechanics looking at the tickets are like, I got to get this one done because the customer's coming. And a lot of them came at 3 to pick their bike up because they wanted their bike. Maybe they only had one bike. Hey, they're in Kenilworth. They couldn't afford 2. They were too cheap to have 2. And they drove a Ford station wagon too. And so it pushed the guys, but I don't remember much complaining. They all got good at it. You know, take the bearings apart. You doing your own?
I used to.
Oh, what do you do now?
What
Just
do I do now? I
spray
bring
more-
them to a shop.
spray more oil in the crack and make it spin?
No, I used to.
You bring them in. Good for you.
Yeah. you
Yeah,
know,
used to
shop
take-
needs work
used-
too.
Used to take them apart.
My wife said to me
Take it all
today,
apart.
why are the two mowers out of the little
They're
barn?
easier then.
I
too.
said, because they're gonna come and pick them up and service them. Oh, we're gonna let someone else do that? Yeah. How many times have I ever got them done on time?
Yeah.
Do I know how to service a gas engine? No. It's always a terrible experience when I do it myself. So, you can get cut, you could have an
Yeah.
explosion from the gasoline, you could get electrocuted. The mower could run you over with the blade spinning.
But you get a tremendous sense of accomplishment if you do get it
You
right.
can't get the. deck
Yeah,
on.
well,
Right.
after 5 hours and you realize someone put water in the gas,
Oh,
because they
Oh,
left a
my.
can out next to the building.
oh, no.
Right, you know. So, we want to keep everything working. Are all of these new bikes
Yes, yes, they are,
ready for spring?
ready for spring. Yeah, I mean, he might have some repairs in here mixed in,
Ready to go.
ready to go.
You
You
mentioned
know
your
you know who we owe money to.
You mentioned Lon's Tandem before.
Is
Is
it-
that the one up there? or
Is
the-
it there on the poster? Yes. Yeah, that was Reynolds 531 tubing. And the arrow tube to match the head tube on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an arrow down tube made out of that material. And the rest of it was 531, except the tube between the
Yeah, I
cranks.
was saying, how'd you get the boom tube?
4130 chrome moly
Oh, yeah.
from the Aircraft Supply Company. And those companies are small that do the 4130 chrome moly. That's not like Ryerson Steel. That's like where they make small airplanes out in Kansas or somewhere, and you call them, how much do you need? I said, I only need like 8 feet. Then they call you back, and say, will 7 feet be enough? I'm like, yes. You know,
Scrap piece probably.
it is. It is left over from something else, but they kept it and categorized it. And Ryerson does that. They have scrap hunks. Menards has scrap hunks of copper tubing and scrap hunks of plywood and all variety of things on their website. And I think the website even transfers to their eBay site. So that if you only need 2 foot pieces of copper plumbing, 2-inch, they've got thousands of them.
Wow.
Why? I don't know. They agreed to sell somebody 8-footers instead of 10s,
They had to make them.
and they cut off the 2 feet, and they didn't throw the 2 feet away or scrap it. They market it, which is really the way
I
to
think
do
that's
it.
smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it shouldn't all go to scrap. The only thing that should go to scrap is our class ring from high school.
What's the strangest material you ever made a bike out of?
No, it's all been,
All steel?
all the fancy steels.
Never did copper, stainless steel,
No,
aluminum?
stainless steel, no aluminum, because that's MIG TIG welding, and I don't know how to do that. I'm just torch brazed.
Yeah.
So, the stainless is nifty, and that you could do all the same type of brazing on the stainless. Typically though, stainless, although they've gotten better in the last 15 years, it did not have the durability of the chrome moly steels. Yeah, and really 531 is just a British aircraft. Reynolds, they made 1,000,000 times more for airplanes, and then, oh yeah, we need to make a day and a half's worth of bicycle tubing for the whole world to supply them.
What do you think of 853?
Yes, oh no, and it's,
That's my latest steel bike.
well, that's not made in England.
No.
The Reynolds tubings are not made in England,
Where are they made?
Japan,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Is Columbus still made?
Columbus is still made in Italy,
It is.
yes. Right, so that transition to Japan for Reynolds was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But again, the Reynolds name is a marketing name, and they were making carbon tubing out in Utah. They were making carbon tubing for Trek, for the 3-tube carbon bikes. So, and, because they're like, oh, we better make something else. Nippon Steel was a 1% partner in Kestrel, because they were very interested in like, where's carbon fiber gonna go to? Are we gonna see a lot of it in cars? We're a steel company, but maybe we should be involved with that. So they got involved with Kestrel so they could test and look and watch and get their fingers in there and see what the heck, how does this work? You can make some pretty interesting things out of carbon fiber. You can, there's like a putty mixture with the strands of fabric.
Have you seen some of Craig Calfee's bikes?
Yes, exactly.
Or even bamboo, he does a carbon wrap.
Yes, bamboo is an amazing, well, bamboo is composite. So is pine and oak and walnut, right? And the curiousness of all the steel has the same flex, no matter what the brand is. If it's the same diameter and the same wall thickness and butted, Reynolds, Columbus, Ishiwata, Tange, Supervita, they all flex exactly the same. And for people to say, oh, my friend flexes more now, and that's like saying the Eiffel Tower sways 10 more feet now than it did 125 years ago. No, that never changes. The amount of flex, who's been on the Mackinac Bridge? Man, does that thing flex?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it doesn't flex any more now than it did in 1960.
Really?
Unless it were rusted through and you had less material.
Okay.
But that's why they never stop painting it.
Mm.
When they get done with one end, they go back to the other end and start again. They're constantly painting. And the towers on the Mackinac Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
they paint the inside
Oh.
as well as the outside.
Oh.
Down under the water.
No kidding.
There's not water in it,
Yeah.
but it's hollow down to the concrete base way down there.
Okay.
50 feet, 80 feet. I don't know how far down. But they have hatch doors and then they,
Wow.
because you get humidity
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a pinhole leak.
Mm.
And there's no Dutch boy to put the finger in the hole. Is that the story? The Dutch boy? Yeah,
Might be.
yeah.
A funny story about aluminum and steel. We were on a ride years ago. We were actually up at LaGrange. We stopped for a rest stop there.
Yes.
My wife and I were on tandem. Our friends were on tandem. They had a creek in their seat post or something. We were looking at it when we stopped there. And another guy was there riding. He stopped and he came over and looked. He said, aluminum demons.
Yes.
He was from Waterford.
But you gotta have grease between the different pieces, or never sees, you use never sees? Yeah, exactly, never sees. I mean, that works even on the car or the truck. Yeah, you got it.
Was it last year or the year before? We went up to Waterford's last ride.
Yeah.
Yes,
When they had
Just
that
2 summers
area,
ago.
I don't know,
Yeah.
there,
Richard, anybody know what Richard's doing?
No. Oh, yeah, he's doing that,
He's
yeah.
playing the violin. He always wanted to play the violin.
Really?
Wow,
Oh, wow. How about
I am super jealous.
Yeah.
It's like Geneva Symphony.
Yeah. I'm thinking, wow, that's what a nice thing.
He's actually in the symphony?
Yes,
No kidding.
yeah. 18th chair. No, I'm teasing. I don't know how many chairs
yeah.
there.
But you talk about equipment too. When we were there that day, he was like, what are we gonna do with all his equipment? There was some guy there that was interested in some of it though. I think it was out of Madison or something. He was
Yeah.
a small frame builder. He was maybe gonna buy some of it because
Maybe got some
they
pieces.
had a lot of machinery.
Was it
Yeah.
Dave Wages?
I don't know. I didn't see who it was.
We rode
but
with
it-
him that day.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, when you have leftover machinery, and if we look now on the internet, there's leftover machines of every kind, like crazy, like $80,000 pantograph engraving machines that I used to work on back then, and they were 20 grand, 25 grand, and it's like $3,000, and like looks perfect. One owner owned it for 45 years, and the machinist kept it perfect. And I'm like, do I want that? I would want one. Do I need it?
Where are you gonna put it?
I could engrave Wayne's name in his stem. That's $12.
So what do you
start,
have
huh?
to do?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yikes.
yeah.
Didn't you manufacture your own wheels for a while?
Pardon?
Didn't you manufacture your own wheels for a while?
We had a customer, and he worked on a loading dock for 15 years. Young man from Skokie. Then he bought a touring bike, trick touring bike. He went touring for a year and a half, and he came back, finally done with his tour. All the pictures tell us all the stories. Like, man, I don't wanna go back to the loading dock. I wanna make something. I wanna make something for the bike industry. What should I make? Mark Smith was his name. I said, give me a week, I'll think about that. He'd come back. What should I make? Aluminum bicycle rims. Why? Because if you want aluminum bicycle rims now, you bring them from France, this was 40 years ago, or you bring them from Japan. You're basically shipping containers full of air. If you had a deal with a potato chip company, you could fill all the empty space with potato chips. You know, you could get consolidation, but nobody wants to do that with you. So he looked into it, and he bought used machinery, and he went to the metallurgical lab in Skokie, and we had samples of every aluminum rim that had ever been made, bent, that I hung in the attic. And I said, here, go find out which metals are each. I said, in this brand here, this Maritano rim, this tubular soap Maritano rim from Italy, these are the most uniform, easiest to build, stay true, really strong, da-da-da-da. And then so he copied that material. He made clinchers. Maritanos were sew-ups. But he also found out that when you push the aluminum through the extruding machine, there's a moment when it's molten aluminum, because you're pushing solid into a smaller space, and it gets hot from the friction, and then it re-solidifies on the backside, and there's a metal prong with the inner shape so that you can have a hollow rim. If they push it too fast, the wall thicknesses of the rim will get thick on one side and narrow on the other, or this way. And then when you build them up there, you always want to do something like this. So he would call the extruder. There was only like 3 companies in America that could extrude what he needed, you know, and as soon as a truck would come with 20,000 pounds of aluminum, which were long enough to hoop 3 rims, just like the Schwinn hooper, but he didn't have to, you know, he didn't have to make the shape because it was already aluminum extruded. And he'd hoop them and cut them and plug them together and drill the holes. But he would measure them very carefully. And he'd call, I told you not to push too fast. I reject this hole. But they can take the material, squeeze it back into a block, and push it again. And interestingly, when you bend, everybody's bent coat hanger, and then you try and straighten that little bend and they never get it straight again because you've made it stronger where the curve is.
Oh.
Metal forks, not that purple bike, because that one was too strong to bend, but a Reynolds fork and a town gauge fork, when the curve gets bent in there, that curve now is stronger than it was when it was straight. It's called work hardening. So when you hoop the aluminum, it work hardens the aluminum. So now it's stronger as a hoop than it was when it was straight.
They talk about aluminum fatigue though. Did that do anything to the fatigue, to the aluminum though, with reheating it and reforming it?
No.
No.
No. What happens with the aluminum fatigue is, any aluminum bikes up there?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Which one?
the LRs.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Aluminum rims up there?
I'm sure there's aluminum rims.
They're fatiguing just sitting there. Aluminum fatigues just time. Steel doesn't have that problem.
No.
Aluminum
Of course
fatigues
there's aluminum.
just with time. So, that's a curious property of the aluminum. Is like, okay, how old is it? So, the aluminum rim that's 60 years old, you hit a small pothole, damn, that thing bent easy. Because it has fatigue. And when we're riding it, it fatigues even faster. So,
So I can tell my wife I need a new bike.
Yes.
Or at
as
least
long
My
as
bike is
she
fatiguing.
as long as she doesn't know where I live.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
at least no wheels.
Yeah. But so Mark started to make rims, and he made them in the back room of the bike store. He would go to a place and he'd have someone else do the hooping, and he'd bring them to the bike store and he'd plug them together, and he would drill all the holes on my drill press. He
Really?
had fixtures made and press the eyelets in, and it was Matrix True America rims. And Bevel was still at Trek. And Bevel had said to me early on, who's this guy? He's crazy. He's never made anything. What does he think he's gonna make rims? But Mark was just driven because he didn't want to own a hot dog stand.
Yeah, I think I remember Matrix rims.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
So Bevel called. He goes, the guy brought me rims. I didn't think he'd really make rims. So he gave him an order. No. I said, you promised you would give him an order if he made rims. Yeah, I know. I said, you can't just tell a young guy like that you're not going to order rims. You know, order 1,000 rims. Give him an order. So Bevel gave him an order, and Trek started using Matrix True America rims. So then, now he's building rims. And they're good rims. They were 10% stronger than the ones in the Regitas from France, because it was a different material. Weighed exactly the same. They were stronger, more dent resistant. So Mark goes to Rockford, is that way? Yeah. And he gets a little space and he starts making them there, closer to the factory. Well then, you're still shipping them. And Trek's got enough room at the time in the factory that someone at Trek finally said, the person in charge of running the factory, you know, we got all this space, why don't you just move all your equipment in that corner? Make the rims right here.
Perfect.
So he did, he made the rims right in the corner, and after 3 years, he sold Trek all the equipment. So Trek made Matrix True America rims. Matrix got onto the saddles, I don't know if they still use the Matrix name on anything,
I don't think
but it was on tires and saddles and all kinds of things for a while. Because suddenly it's a trademark,
Branding,
yeah, branding.
Like Bontrager or something.
Yes, you know, that was Keith, of course. So, paid Keith to retire and took his name and made product.
Just like
Sure.
Gary Fisher.
Yes. Gary got hired to be spokesperson and the wearer of the funny hats.
Mustache.
Yes. Does he have a mustache?
Yeah,
It was
Really?
kind of
the
almost,
handlebar, yeah, the old,
yeah.
I like the movie The Apprentice. Who's the actor in the movie The Apprentice?
Robert De Niro?
And the gal's got a
Anne Hathaway?
she's
You're
got
talking about when he was an older guy, retired?
yes. And he's working back at the same office that he worked in.
I don't know. But there was,
And the other workers, they're dressed slovenly, and he
He's got the
comes
suit
in
on.
a suit and a briefcase, and they looked at him, and no offense, but because I look like you most of the time. The other guys are, do you shave every day? Even if you're not gonna see anybody? And he goes, yes, I shave every day. You have a different tie on every day. You know, not Robert De Niro, but everybody knows. That's the other guy.
I just cultivate this for a Wisconsin look. Typically, I'm clean shaven.
But you're living in Wisconsin?
Last,
What happened? No, I'm teasing.
yeah, since 2007.
Yeah.
But I don't have cheese curds running through my veins yet or anything.
What township are you in?
Geneva.
Lyons?
No,
Geneva?
I'm on the west side of Lake Geneva,
Of
between
the,
Williams Bay and Lake Geneva.
of the yeah. So, because we all know what taxes are here. Boy, do they have a nice high school. Yeah. Yeah, it was a shock when we bought that building. And the taxes came around, like, holy cow, how did that happen?
More than Kenilworth though?
Yes,
Really?
more than Kenilworth?
yes,
Seriously, wow, that
Per-
surprises me.
yeah.
But you had had the Kenilworth building for a long time.
The old farmhouse is 1913,
Ah,
and the property was 1895. So, yeah.
so it hadn't really changed hands.
No, never changed hands.
No.
Sorta never changed
Yeah,
hands.
but not, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Never a deeded sale to somebody.
Yeah,
So and that makes a difference.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when it gets,
Except now, here they appraise every 3 years. So whether you sell or not, if your neighbor sells, they up your,
yeah. So, wow.
yeah, it's a
I
tough,
just want
tough
that
area
empty
for
lot
real
on the
estate
lake.
tax, yeah. Illinois is
my
much
tent.
better.
Yeah, I'm sure that would fly real well.
Yeah. I mean, it's an astounding piece of water. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. You go on the boat tour and you look at the homes and you go,
Yeah.
And like nobody lives there. Well,
Oh.
A lot
not
of them,
full time.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody lives there full time, right? I don't think anybody lives there full time.
some of them come up from Texas. The family comes up. Dad only comes up every second or third weekend in the summer. But they come up to get away from the heat and they're on the water, on that lake, in the big house. It's 3 or 4 houses down from Wrigley. You know, but who knew? If we all knew, we would have bought one a long time ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We laugh with a lady who has a house on Snake Road. And then I would frequent, because I worked with her son. And then they would say, well, we know you live near Richmond. Can you bring it to our Lake Geneva house instead of our Winnetka house? Yeah, I can drop it off there. And you go there, and looking at the house, and it was a summer home. It had never been heated for 80 years. It was built for some industrialist in like 1913 under a circus tent. They heated the circus tent so that they could have that home for the summer. You know, they needed it. So the lady and her family, they bought it, but it had deteriorated. Drywall doesn't do well when a home has no heat. No, not drywall, lath and plaster. It was maybe 8,000 feet or 7,000. Not humongous, but then there's the groundskeeper's house, and then, you know, and then there's the help. So there's little houses, but are only like 900 square feet, but they're so damn cute.
Yeah, keep running about.
So I'm looking at the house and I'm like, holy cow. You really got it done up well. And she said, we had no idea. We didn't know what remodeling cost. We just didn't understand. I said, so 3 or 4 times more than you paid for it. She's like, oh no, more. For what we paid for it compared to what we did to get it up to speed, 3 or 4 times more. She said, and when we bought it, we didn't have any cash. And the seller was willing to let us have time payments. 1 payment a year for 10 years. It's called House in the Woods. It's 33 acres. It's one of the last ones on Snake Road down there. House in the Woods. Hundreds of oak and walnut trees. It's spectacular. 33 acres on the water.
That's a lot.
If they hadn't bought it, it'd have been 33 condominiums.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So they bought it and preserved it, and so when people look up, I wonder who owns that. You wonder who owns that. Someone who didn't understand what remodeling costs. And they know what new construction costs. Their home in Winnetka is 24,000 square feet.
Oh,
That's big.
right.
48 pair of French doors.
Wow.
48 pair of French doors.
Oh,
14-foot ceilings. The doors are 8 feet, the humped window is another 3 feet. You can't build a door that tall and make it skinny, it's gotta be thick. So they're hugely thick.
Yeah.
And usually French doors has the batten on the one door, but they can still warp. No, the builder was down here in Genoa City, and he took the one door and he cupped it in a solid mahogany, and he rounded the other door, so when the 2 doors close, they interlock on
Oh,
each other.
man.
Oh, man.
And every light of glass is 3 panes.
Hmm.
And when you go in the basement, you go down the other end and you're at the swimming pool, you don't know you're at a lower level because it's terraced up. 3.5 acres in Winnetka that tore down like 6 houses. The historic ones, they moved them across the street,
Wow.
tore houses down over there to make everybody happy, and then sold them for $1. And they deserve that house, because I think all the trades guys and gals who soldered the wires and helped build that house, everybody got paid. 24,000 square feet. You could have a party there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty big party.
Yeah.
That's kind of big. I mean, to me, it's,
If you're gonna host a presidential
Kinda too big.
fundraising dinner, you need a big
I
house.
guess.
I guess. Wow.
So when I guessed it was gonna be their house, all I could think of was, don't ask them. The CIA will be at my door, wondering how I found out, but it was, they had a presidential fundraiser there at one time, 20, 30 years ago. But it's a nifty house, really, really nifty.
Mm.
And I met them because the guy who made the doors, Von Krumpen, used to come in the bike store.
Oh.
And he's like, I'm trying to make this work and I can't. He said, you know all about wheels, you know. Don says to me, he's buying every wheel in the catalog for every little different kind of wheel for anything, wagon wheels and stuff, because he's trying to make something work and he just couldn't get it to do what he wanted it to do. Could you do it? They're in Winnetka, you could go meet with them, see what she wants done. So so I ended up doing that. It was nice, it was good work. It was fun work, it was fulfilling, because the youngest boy is disabled. And it was to make the walker roll only one way and not the other, so that he wouldn't tip over backwards
Oh.
with his walker. The walker's behind him, he walks forward, and it doesn't. It's a three-wheel.
Mhm.
Put free wheels in the wheels. But free wheels have that
Oh.
amount of distance,
Sure.
so I didn't use free wheels. I used special bearings out of printing presses that roll only in one direction,
Wow.
and they don't roll back. You guys printed the cardboard.
We did.
Yes, the print press doesn't go backwards.
No.
No, those bearings only go one way.
Right.
Don't get your hand stuck in there.
Oh, wow.
You know that.
I've heard a horror story
Yes.
after I retired. and
Everybody in the printing trade knows that.
I know one
So-
bad thing that happened. Yeah.
So-
Somebody lost
And
a
then, and
couple
then,
fingers.
so I would meet with them in his exercise room, and meet with them up there and modify the equipment. And one day she's like, "What's that?" On the walker, he would complain because he'd sit on the pipe and it would hurt. I mean, it hurts. So I cut a skateboard in half and I fashioned up a skateboard so he could sit on there. Because where he was at school, the school was built at different sections at different times, and the hallways had like skateboard ramps. And he would run that walker down the ramp like a skateboard. The kids knew he was coming. He's coming! And he'd sit on that skateboard thing and down the hall, and his mother's like, "What are you doing? You're encouraging him." I said, "You're gonna buy him the Corvette with the hand controls." It was encouraging him. So it was nice because it made him way more mobile. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Like bikes.
Yes, and he
Bikes
rode
is
the
just
indoor
one
bike,
Oh.
but couldn't keep his feet on the pedals. So they had roller skates with the key bolted to the pedals. And it would take 10 minutes to get him on the exercise bike and tighten up the shoes. I'm like, no. Bike shoes, clipless pedals, stretchy pants. And he was like, "I'm not wearing no stretchy pants." I'm like, "Yeah, you're gonna wear the stretchy pants and you're gonna have aero bars so you can lean down." And he did, because it was hard. He was strong on one side and weak on the other, so he could relax on the aero bars. And then he would ride that indoor bike. And it was a free wheel. I put him on a fixed so that it would,
Be more of a workout.
yes. Took all the braces off. The orthopedic surgeon's like, "You can't do that. You're the surgeon. You could say yes. And if you weren't here, I would do it without you, and I'd still take those things off." And that way he could get some ankle motion, and he got an easier pedal action. And they were like, "Come on, let's try this." And every time I'd show up, he's like, "You're here to make me exercise." Like, that's my job. So, nice young man, smarter than all get out. Worked at the movie theater, ticket taker.
Oh boy.
Worked water safety patrol on the radio. Didn't need the money. Water Safety Patrol, it's what probably volunteer, you know, ticket taker, they probably give him $6.
Yeah.
You know, when he was 17, 18, 19. So, but, oh. So even wealthy people work, don't they?
I don't know.
Everybody's looking at you, Gary.
It was interesting.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
You got so many bikes, you must be rich.
They're driven. When they're that driven, they just can't stop. Some of them just can't stop. It's not out of greed, it's out of just drive.
Money with my wife was with an international firm in Phoenix, and I said money is just how they keep score, because they've made all they need.
Yes,
They can only remodel their house so many times.
Yes.
Now it's just a way to keep score.
yes,
To see, I brought in more business than you did this year.
yes.
It has nothing to do with the money. Their life
No.
is no better.
But they're driven, and you know, how much productivity can we get out of everything? And really, that's part of it. Did you look? Did I send you any of the agricultural things that Elon's brother is doing?
No, you
Kimball.
sent me a recent one.
Kimball has a 1 hour YouTube from
Oh,
about a year ago, a year and a half, and growing hydroponics inside of containers. You know, you get 3 or 4 containers stacked, and you can grow more than a 400-acre field of greens. It's like, and they have initiatives like that all over the world.
You know, rooftop gardens now.
Very big thing, and why not? And that all should be done. But so Kimball's driven to do that. He you know, he said to the farmers, "Come on, guys, you got to get a smartphone and a lap, saying a pad." So I know what he was trying to run his restaurants in Boulder. Like, I need to know what vegetables you got in the morning so I can plan the afternoon and evening meals at the restaurant. If we're going to do farm to table, if we're going to do just in time, and we're not going to ship from California to Boulder, I got to know what you got. Have you got radishes today or not? So then they bring them all up to speed, and it made a nice thing. Is there any farms to table here in the city?
there are, I think, simple is farm to table.
Maybe, yeah.
There's probably another one or two, right?
You know, it's funny you say that, because I can't think where I've been where they have all, like, Yuppie Hill poultry for the eggs and Collectivo for the coffee and Lake Geneva Country Meats. So there are some, maybe not farm to table,
I
but
don't know
awfully
if it's
darn close.
100%, you know, but they support it.
Yeah.
It's just hard, I think, to be 100%.
Grand Geneva's having something coming up, where they're using Lake Geneva Country Meats,
Okay.
River Valley Ranch
Ah.
from mushrooms, and I think, is it Doosterbeck's?
Oh,
I hope
yes,
so.
it is,
Right.
yes.
I forget, they're trying to, just.
But
locally
just in time,
sourced.
it should happen.
It should be
It
logical.
should really happen.
Well, that's the way the whole supply chain management, I thought that, when you look at some of the things like cars, you know, so many different parts from so many different places, and, you know, they were just talking about it with the tariffs. Like, it's in Mexico, and then it goes back to the United States, and it goes back to Mexico as part of a bigger piece.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
What
just
a
like,
waste
it sounds
of
so incredibly,
transportation.
it sounds so incredibly inefficient, but when you look at, like, the, I was thinking, like, the algorithm, probably the first job to go is gonna be supply chain management. So, you know, you're trying to make sure that all the right pieces are at the right place at the right time, and you're not paying interest on things that aren't producing income.
I mean, for these twins, 90% of that was raw material coming in one end of the factory and going out finished at the other. They bought very little product from anyone else, so they didn't have to rely on that. And they were a big enough company that, you know, you're buying pedals from Germany. The guy in Germany's like, yeah, we got your pedals on the way. Just keep shipping pedals every other week, you know, because we're going to need them. And they only had 4 or 5 different choices. Now we got 100 different pedals. Dan has every model in stock.
Wow.
I know,
I'm
there
gonna
they
need
are.
pedals.
That's the, I like,
Yeah.
there's a book called The Paradox of Choice. We always thought choice was freedom, and now we're overwhelmed by it. We can't make a decision because oh, what if I don't get the best one? What if I don't get the right one? Is this compatible? Is this fit for what I want to do? Yeah,
That's
it's too much.
decision if
I
it's-
go to the local pizza place and I look in the cooler at all the soft drinks and hard drinks and tea and
Yeah.
coffee at Casey's,
Mhm.
pizza place, Casey's Pizza.
Yeah, right.
They sell fuel too, by the way. And I'm like, what is this? Good to see
All right,
you.
good to see you too.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Did you get a sample?
Yeah, I got
You got a Schwinn nut? Okay. Making sure nobody got slighted. 2, 3, 4, 5. You didn't get a Schwinn nut.
I didn't.
Do you want one?
We have a Schwinn on there for you.
There you go, now I do.
Okay.
I
I
probably
wish
have one in my
Schwinn-
spare.
Wayne,
parking.
Wayne's gonna share with you.
He's nice,
Sorry,
he's
sorry,
very
Michael.
kind.
Well, you know, it's interesting with cycling, I've noticed this recently, in the last few years, that I go somewhere like the Pie Ride or the Black Hawk Memorial Weekend Ride,
Yeah.
and it's a bunch of old people. By old people, I mean my age. And then we have the Tuesday, Thursday club rides where we're getting a handful of young 20-somethings, you know,
Yes.
early 30s. They're, you know, in college, fresh out of college. They're young, they're strong. I'm like, wow. But then what seems to happen is then they get married and have kids and the
Yes.
bikes go on the back burner.
Right.
And then at 45, 50, they come back to cycling
Yeah.
again. So it seems like there's this window of,
I think it's been that way for a long time.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. And we'd see that with the customer base.
I see it now because I'm the old guy. I didn't see it before.
Yeah. No, but busy. We get busy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Except Wayne, he quit work. He quit.
I just for
He quit. Big people say,
41 years and 4 months.
they say to me,
Move
you
on now.
don't work? I'm like, no, I quit. You quit? Yeah, I was only at the same place for 49 years and then I quit.
I've been riding 35, 30, 37 years consistently.
Yes.
I'm just a big kid and won't put my toys away.
Because it's being outside.
53 years.
Wayne's gonna go home and find his fishing pole.
I've got my Bob Jackson from 1972 in the
Yes.
garage, ready to ride,
Yes.
Beautiful.
full camping. The only thing I've changed now are the pedals.
Clipless
I have
pedals.
I have some original equipment on that bike yet.
Yeah.
I quit riding through like high school, rode a little bit in college, and then afterwards I came back. I mean, I wasn't ever the dedicated cyclist I was as an adult, but you know, it was transportation when you were a kid. It was freedom.
Oh, yeah, right.
Do you see the kids in the neighborhood with their fishing poles on the bikes?
I have seen that a little bit,
Yeah.
yes,
A lot, though.
going down to Nipperson Creek, yeah.
More and more.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow.
Mm-hmm,
They've actually got a bike and they got a fishing pole.
mm-hmm,
And they know what they're doing. You know, riding
Yeah.
the wrong direction on the road and,
and all that.
you know, riding down into the ditch
Not-
when the
no
cars come.
helmet, but,
No, I know, but that's,
hey, you know, we were there.
and you see a young boy that lives in Solon Mills who's got cerebral palsy?
Is he the one on the three-wheeler now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
rides from Solon Mills
Mm-hmm.
over to Casey's and
I didn't know where he lived, but yeah, we've seen him
lives with his
on and off
sister.
quite a bit, yeah.
His mom and sister, and then his mom passed away.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
But he's there, and
Yeah.
she's got him on a tracker. She knows where he is all the time.
okay.
oh.
He'll come by our house. I mean, he'll
Because
make
we
an
have
appointment.
seen him on that road.
He'll
a
make an
lot.
appointment.
Oh,
It's really warm today. Can I bring all my gear and go
Yeah.
go swimming with Daniel? Yes, you can.
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's more
Yeah.
verbal than Daniel. So
Okay.
and he'll spend an hour or two, and he'll bring his own snacks. So,
Nice.
but
Yeah,
one day at the bar, he
Hmm.
looks at Denise. She's maybe 40. Are you married? She's like, no. Do you want to get married?
Just like
So-
that.
It was so cute.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah. So they lowered the speed limit, not on,
Oh, yeah.
not on my
Yeah, they
street.
lowered it. in
Right,
the
all
subdivision.
around.
All, yeah, in all the
And
subdivisions.
then they put a sign up with, you can't drive a golf cart or something. I'm
They
like,
reversed that already again.
why
Is that
are they
right?
doing
That
that?
was
Then they
weird.
took that off, and
Yes.
then they put it back on again. I'm like,
No, I think it's back to golf carts are
just
okay.
like,
Okay.
there's like nobody. We have a circle subdivision. It's like, who's gonna be there?
Yeah,
Although there are people that drive through pretty fast. I mean, it's like, do you have kids? Because you were driving way too fast. I mean, even with the speed limit posted, you should still drive slower.
So,
Because it was 30. Now they reduced it to 25. But
Yeah,
even 30, I thought was a lot.
when I get back to working on the motorhome and do some of the small mechanical things, then I'll be driving your loop.
oh, okay.
Oh, we'll have to
Oh,
look for
yeah.
that.
Not at speed, but I mean,
Yeah.
Instead of
we'll be
driving up-
looking.
Yeah,
Stop.
instead of driving up here and stalling out up here, if I stall on the loop, I
yeah,
figure
Oh.
the boys can come with the pickup truck and
there you go.
strap it up and,
You call your neighbors to push it.
well,
That's right, get some of us
Wayne's
out,
gone fishing.
yeah. No, we got another rider in our neighborhood who bought a bike from your store, I believe, oh, the McHenry store.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so we can push your vehicle,
Yeah.
he's strong and able.
And Jerry's my neighbor too.
Okay.
You know Jerry?
Yes.
Foreman?
Yes.
Yes, lives on
Yes.
North Solon Road,
Yes.
about a mile and a half.
Yes.
away.
Oh, okay.
It was about 4 years ago, he stopped at my driveway. You Ron boy? Yes. What a bike from you, like 900 years ago. He's not that old.
That was so
Nice.
bizarre when we moved into our house and realized that you lived that close with me.
Yeah,
Right
Wow, what are the odds of that? That was like so
there.
bizarre.
Not a bad
Yeah.
place.
No.
yeah.
It was funny when I moved back here, or before I was moving back here, I was afraid that the bike shop was gonna sell snow blowers and, in the off season, you know, like I'm going to a small town, what kind of bike shop am I possibly gonna have there? How am I gonna get, and it's like, yeah, Don had me covered from day one, so.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So you were cold called into here when you came from Arizona.
Well, my wife was from Lake Geneva originally. Her
Okay.
parents, her dad was the teacher at the academy back in,
Yes.
'60s.
When it was.
And I met her in Arizona. I said if she wanted to move back to Wisconsin, I'd miss her, but here I am.
Yes. So you didn't know what bike store style was here. You
No,
were-
it was just my brother-in-law's. There's a bike shop in town, and it was kind of I wasn't sure at first what I was getting into, and it was
When I came in years ago, it was in the corner of a sporting goods store in one of the malls. And then so it was like, no, we'll take all this stuff, but we're going over there across the street from Kentucky Fried Chicken. So,
Oh, you were there? And that place that's across from Kentucky Fried Chicken?
yeah,
Where
the
they
building,
have the
the
mopeds
building-
or whatever they have there now, there's like rental.
it's
things,
a
the
rental
scooter
place.
places.
Yeah.
the building in between the two rivers.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, the brick building.
Yep,
I
we
love
rented
that
down.
building.
Yeah, I started coming.
It's
when
a
you were
great
in,
building.
I love the building.
Across
But-
from Quick Trip now.
It's hard for the
Right,
consumers to get in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Route 50 is way too much traffic.
Yeah.
So everything else is
It was
way
a
better.
great building.
Yes, but it's not the building.
Maybe we can get a photograph of everybody. what do you think?
Sure.
Oh, no.
I know.
Did you stand by your frame? Or you just picture you over there?
We could do that, huh?
Then you take